Good morning, everyone. Today we're going to be speaking about the Seder, about the Passover Seder. The Passover Seder, as we explained in our previous classes, is all about an exchange of questions, of answers, in order that we should be able to be motivated and really think deeply about what's happening tonight and how we're going to live our liberation, our personal liberation of Egypt. So the Haggadah starts with what's called a piska. A piska is a statement. We take the plate and we say, Halachma anya or Helachma anya diachlu avatana be'ar'a de Mitzrayim. This is the bread of affliction which our forefathers ate in Egypt. Kol dichfin yeteve yechol, kol ditzrich yeteve yifsach. We now invite our guests and we invite them to the Seder table. Whoever is needy, whoever wants to participate, please join us in this incredible evening. Hashata avdin leshana abaa benechorin. This year we are slaves. Next year we're going to be free. So when you hear these statements, there's a lot of question marks which should just pop up into your mind. What are we celebrating tonight? We are celebrating the liberation from Egypt. If that is the case, then what are we saying? That today we are slaves. Tomorrow we'll be free. Hashata achad, this year we are here, now we're here. L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. So what are you celebrating exactly? If we're not free, how are we celebrating freedom? Why are we celebrating freedom? Besides that, we say about the matzah. This is the matzah that we ate when we were in Egypt. Really? Is this the matzah that we ate when we were in Egypt? Will we not say later on in the Haggadah, matzah zu shanu ochlim, this matzah which we eat, al shum shelo, because, for what reason are we eating this matzah? Because the dough was not able to rise. Why? Because we were running out of Egypt. We didn't have time for it to rise. So it seems that we ate this matzah out of Egypt, not in Egypt. So what exactly are we celebrating? I don't understand. What are you mentioning the matzah that we ate in Egypt? Besides that, we say, Kol ditzrich, anyone that wants to join, please join us on this Pesach Seder. Really? You're now already around the table. You already have a set amount of plates. Maybe you left some for your guests which don't have where to eat. Now you invite them. Shouldn't you have done this invitation the week before, the month before, for those who are very square? What happened exactly? Well, to understand all this, let's go back to Egypt for a second. החודש הזה לכם ראש חודשים. On Rosh Chodesh, God commands the Jewish people to take a lamb on the 10th of the month, attach it to your bed, and for 3 days, look at the lamb, make sure it doesn't have any blemish. On the 4th day, be ready to sacrifice that lamb as a Paschal, a Passover offering. And not only that, the Torah goes to the great extent to tell us, do not, bashlu, now bashel mevushal b'mayim, do not cook it, do not bake it, don't boil it, broil it, grill it on the fire. Why? Why does the Torah tell us grill it on the fire? Not only that, we're going to tell you how to cook it. We're going to tell you how to cook it. It has to be grosho al kar'av al kirbo. It has to be a special type of korban, a special type of sacrifice. You have to tie its hands and its legs, and the head should be towards the arms. So what are we talking about? What is this saying? What is this teaching us? Why is the Torah going to such a great extent to tell us how to cook it, how to eat it? And then it's telling you even in how to eat it, be careful. Ve'etzem lo tishberu bo. Don't break a bone. Be careful when you eat that lamb, don't break a bone. What are we talking about? To understand all this, we have to understand exactly where the Jewish people were living. We are living for 210 years in an exile in Egypt, a land which is perverted, a land which is so lowly, a land where there's no respect for humanity. And in this land, where they serve idols, and the main idol they serve is the lamb, we, the Jewish people, are asked to take their God and attach it to our bed. Now imagine the scenario. We were slaves there for 209 years. That last year, they've seen plague after plague plague them. And now they see that we're taking their God and we're attaching it to our bed. Bah, bah, bah. What's happening? Jew, hello? Well, what are you doing? Well, God commanded that in a few days from now, we should sacrifice the lamb. Our God, you're going to sacrifice our God. Yeah, not only that. When we slaughter the animal, we're going to take that blood and paint the sides of our door, so that when God comes to kill all the firstborn Egyptians, that will be a sign of protection for us. And this is what happens. The Jewish people, we know that just before Makat Bechorot, before the last plague, which was the killing of all the firstborn Egyptians, we have 3 days of darkness. A darkness which is so thick that those who were sitting could not move for 3 days, and those who were standing could not move either. Here we find that during this time, we had a great calamity befall the Jewish people. 4/5 of the Jewish people which did not believe in the redemption, did not believe in the coming out of Egypt, were so absorbed by the slave mentality of Egypt, died. After that, we are commanded to take that lamb, and we have to face the enemy. We have to face the oppressor. You can imagine what type of therapy is. You put me in a state of trauma, right? I have PTSD from you. But I have to face the oppressor. I have to face the abuser in his eyes. And I have to tell the abuser, I'm going to take your God. which means your vitality, your life force, your confidence, the one with which the one you used to be able to oppress me, and I'm going to sacrifice your God. I'm going to sacrifice, I'm going to take, I'm going to give it because God told me. Which means I believe in a greater strength than you. I'm not impressed by you anymore. God is starting to put in the Jewish people a process of transformation where the slave has to change his mentality. Being in the country that is enslaving him, he has to be able to express himself and admit to the fact that I have the courage to stand on my own. I'm here physically. You abused me for 209 years. I am no longer going to take it. At that moment, God says, once you sacrifice that lamb, don't boil it, don't bake it, grill it. Dora Haim HaKadosh, one of the great commentaries of the Torah, explains that when you grill something, when you boil something, you could put something over the pan, over the pot, so that nobody is going to know what you're doing. Nobody's going to smell it. But if I'm grilling something on the fire, sometimes your neighbor does a barbecue, le'avdil. You smell it 3 houses away. Here, there was an expression of Jewishness at the highest possible level of Mesirut Nefesh, of self-sacrifice. I'm taking your God before you. I'm slaughtering it. I'm painting the lintels of the doors with its blood. I'm sacrificing it as a sacrifice which is going to be burned so I can eat it afterwards. It's going to be burnt with fire. Everybody needs to know. The Jewish people as a whole nation are ready to sacrifice themselves, put themselves on the line because they're attached to God. What a liberation. To be able to take what your enemy thinks makes him strong and to burn it before its eyes and say, I don't care about you. This reminds me something my father-in-law of blessed memory, Rav Pinchas Gedalia Cohen ben Shimon Zal, once said. He asked the following question. He said, who is really free? This was at the time of communist Russia. The Jewish people, the Jew that lives in communist Russia, is not allowed to pray, is not allowed to teach Torah, is not allowed to study Torah, is not allowed to perform a Brit Milah, is not allowed to show his Judaism, but does all of the above. And he knows if he gets caught, he's going to have to be in exile in Siberia for 10 years, or he will be shot to death. But he still does it. Or is it the young American Jew that came to Miami in the free land, is able to practice his Judaism, eat kosher, teach Torah, study Torah, put on tefillin, light Shabbat candles, keep family purity. But he's so caught up in the last iPhone 263 and the Samsung 368 and the last Tesla and all the pleasures that the world, the material world, has to offer him, that he does nothing. He's too caught up in the physical realm, in the materialist realm. So he asked, is freedom a place on the map, or is freedom a state of mind? And that's what's happening at this moment. God is telling the Jewish people, in Egypt, I want you to experience freedom. But this is the place where we suffered. Exactly. I want you to change what's in your mind, so that afterwards, wherever you are, you'll be able to feel free, feel connected to something higher, to God Himself, to me, God says. So what happens? In the merit of this slaughtering of the lamb, the sacrifice, this emunah, this faith in God, this blind faith, we merited the coming out of Egypt. Self-sacrifice. If you remember at the burning bush, when God spoke to Moshe, Moshe told him, what should I tell them your name is? What will happen? What's next? And God tells him something which really bothered Moshe. He said, Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I will be who I will be. What do you mean? He says, don't worry, Moshe. Don't worry, Moses. I was in this exile with them. In the next exile, I'll be with them as well. Moshe looks at God and says, what are you talking about? They didn't liberate themselves of this exile. They're not free yet. You want to already discourage them and tell them we're going into another exile? Well, what do we celebrate on the night of Pesach? The night of Pesach, we celebrate the beginning of the redemption. Imagine that for 2,248 years, one slave did not get freed from a master. And here, on the day of Pesach, all of the Jewish nation, a whole nation, millions of people, 600,000 men between the ages of 20 and 60 with their wives and children were liberated. Many years ago, there was a runner. And this runner was 25 years old. And he ran the first 4-minute mile. It was a great milestone. No pun intended. And then something very weird happened. The year after that, 36 runners were able to run a 4-minute mile. It became the norm eventually, and today it's possible to run a mile even in much less than 4 minutes. What happened? Till that moment happened, it wasn't possible. It wasn't in the realm of possibility. The moment this happens, this is the beginning of a new channel, of a new era, of a new way of thinking, of a new development in the mind of the individual. He's able to tap into freedom. The fact that we finally came to that moment where we are free, it means that at any moment, any given moment in your life, you can tap into that freedom. And that's why we have what's called the Moed. Moadim. What's Moadim? The holidays. But where does the word holiday, Moed, come from? Moed means the time. There's a specific time where the energy of freedom started, where the energy of freedom is being revealed again. And this is on the night of Pesach. And therefore, on the night of Pesach, even though we are still slaves, we're still in exile, but this is the day where that energy, that possibility got opened finally. And therefore, we are celebrating. So even though we say this year we are slaves, next year in Jerusalem, next year we're free, but the freedom is as accessible. We're celebrating the beginning At the same time, why are we saying this is the matzah that we ate, that we ate, the bread of affliction which we ate in Egypt, when really we ate it out of Egypt? Why are we starting the Agadah with this? Because there are two verses. One verse in the Torah that says, remind yourself, remember every day, the singular day that you came out of Egypt. Pesach. And then the prophet Micha will say later on, Ki me'etzetcha me'eretz Mitzrayim areinu niflaot, just like the days, plural, that you came out of Egypt, so too I will show you wonders. So is it one day or is it many days? The Rebbe explains that from the moment we came out of Egypt, every exile we will live, every suffering we will live, every oppression we will live, is still called Egypt. And therefore, over the generations, over the last 3,334 years, we've been eating matzah on the night of the Seder. And that's what we're telling our guests. Halachmanya, this is the bread of affliction, which our fathers ate in Egypt as we came out. And for years and generations we've been eating on the night of the Seder. And then you invite your guests. What do you invite your guests? They're already here. Why don't you go to shul to invite them, we said. You invite them to tap into this process which is called freedom. Freedom not only at a general level, as a nation, but freedom at a personal level. Every single one of us, somewhere, somewhat, somehow, is oppressed, is limited by limiting beliefs. The night of Pesach, the Mekubalim, the Kabbalists explain, the reason why this is the only holiday in which we say the Hallel, the great prayer of praises to Hashem, which is recited only 18 times a year. We say it at night, and we say the complete Hallel. Because on the night of Pesach, Hallel Shimurim, a night of special protection, there's a light of Hashem that comes down upon us, which is so powerful, so incredible, that the soul naturally cleaves onto it, even if our bodies and our minds are not at the level of experiencing and cleaving on and understanding what's happening. But that light comes down upon us and opens our horizons to such an extent that the moment that we connect to that light, it opens a new gate of freedom. And afterwards, we lose that light. It goes away. For 49 days, we start a process of integration, of transformation, where we are going to connect to ourselves and make ourselves a vessel to receive that light in a way that it can permeate, penetrate, be integrated in our lives, in our mind, in our emotions, in our day-to-day life. And this will come on Shavuot. So tonight, when I invite you at the Seder of Pesach, I'm inviting you to start a process to tap into that light, which you, as a personal individual, is experiencing at a personal level. So the question is, why shouldn't we break the bones of the Korban Pesach, of the Passover offering? The Chinuch says something incredible. The Chinuch explains on this mitzvah that, I'm going to look it up. The mitzvah shelo lishbor etzem min haPesach. Do not break a bone from the Passover offering. Why do we have this mitzvah? Mishorshei mitzvah, says the Chinuch, Rabbi Aaron Halevi, Lezecher nisei Mitzrayim kmo shekatuv b'acherot. This is to remind ourselves of the miracles of Egypt. And he explains, She'en kavod libnei melachim. Now we have come out of Egypt. Al ken betchilat boenu liot am segulat kol ha'amim. Now that we have become the treasured, chosen nation of God on this day of Pesach. Mamlechet kohanim, a kingdom of priests, vegoy kadosh, and a holy nation. Ubechol shana v'shana be'oto zman. And every year, on this night of Pesach, ראוי לעשות מעשים אמרים בנו המעלה הגדולה שעלינו בה. We are supposed to show the great quality, how we have changed from being a slave to being the sons of a king. So every night of Pesach, every night of the Seder, every year, we need to show how we came from a bitter state to a better state. And therefore, it says in this, She'en kavod libnei melachim. It is not proper for the sons of the king, ve'yoatzei eretz, the counselors of the world, of the land, legarer ha'atzamot, uleshabram keklavim, to eat the bones and go after the bone like dogs. Or like poor people, like slaves. And then the Chinuch said something. He says, and you have to be very careful, because there's a concept שהלבבות נמשכים, אחרי המעשים. The heart follows the actions. If you behave like a king, you will desire to be like a king. If you behave like a poor, needy, broken person, you will stay this way. הלב נמשך אחר המעשה. The heart follows the actions. We say in French, l'appétit vient en mangeant. The appetite opens up after we eat. So what are you opening your appetite to? How are you behaving? You don't finger licking good. No, this is not for the Jewish people. We have a certain glory, a certain honor, representing the king on the night of the Seder. And therefore we have to be very careful the way we behave. We have to feel like kings. What is a king? The word melech in Hebrew is 3 letters. Mem, which stands for the word moach, the brain. Lamed, which stands for the word lev, the heart. Chaf, which stands for the word kaved, the liver. You have here the concept of the mind dominating the emotions and the actions, and not the opposite, where the heart dominates the mind. A melech, to be a king, means that you start being a king over yourself. And that's what happens on the night of Pesach. So you can imagine the great joy, the incredible feeling there is on that night of Pesach, where you are sitting around the table. And our sages teach us, Matchilim bignut umesayimim bishvach. You start with the negative history of the Jewish people. We came from an idol worshiper. Avraham Avinu was the son of Terach. But Avraham Avinu started a process. What did Avraham Avinu do? He broke the statues. A statue is something which is inanimate. It doesn't grow, it doesn't transform itself, it doesn't go anywhere. It's like your statue, status, same thing. This is who I am. I'm telling the world. Avraham Avinu says no. I'm starting this Jewish nation that believes that you need to break the statues. Whatever you accomplished yesterday was good for yesterday. Today, you are a new person. And therefore, it's time to break out of yourself. And that's why the word Mitzrayim comes from the word Meitzarim, limitations. Yetziat Mitzrayim means I'm going out of my limitations. We know that at the time in Egypt, there was the Pharaoh, there was the butler, there was the baker. Well, in our body, Chassidus says, we have the same thing. Pharaoh is the same paro in Hebrew, is the same letters as the word ha'oref, the neck. It represents the stiff neck that we have sometimes not to break our nature, to do the right thing. The butler and the baker represent the air pipe and the food pipe. The throat, which is between the head and the heart, which is called Meitzar Hagaron, the tight place of the throat. Just like Mitzrayim, tightness. What is freedom? When I'm able to take my dreams, ambitions, potential which are in my head, that infinite part of me, I'm able to break through my Egypt, my throat, and I'm able to make it reach my heart, where my head dominates the heart which is the driving force of my being, which gives blood and oxygen to the whole body, is driven and guided by the mind. Imagine the moment where mind and heart become one. This is your personal redemption from Egypt. And that's what happens on the night of Pesach. Bezrat Hashem, next week, we'll be speaking about the 4 cups. We'll be speaking about the matzah. We'll be speaking about this great mitzvah of telling over the miracle. But meanwhile, as you prepare yourself, make sure to buy some shmura matzah. There's a lot available out there, Baruch Hashem. And make sure that for the night of the Seder, you do things right. You do things well. You take the time to celebrate God's kingship, God's royalty, and your connection to this royalty. You are regal. It's time to lift yourself up and reveal the king and the queen in you. God bless you.